Another Founder Wisdom podcast today with Will McGhee. He is the co-founder at A Talent Services and founder at Recruiting with Dynamite. So we're going to talk about sales. We're going to talk about recruitment. We're going to talk about courses. Will, welcome to the pod. Can you quickly introduce yourself and your companies?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. So my name is Will McGhee. I've I've been a recruiter for the past 12 years. I started my own agency, A Talent, out of a need to just kind of get out of the grind of a big agency. I thought, it's time to get started and do my own thing. My wife and I, we were co-founders on that. Had a lot of fun. I'm one of the few people that really enjoy working with their wives. So I had a lot of fun building that up. We built it up to a $1.5 million company in 3 years. Just the two of us, pretty much. We had a couple outside vendors that we worked with and partnerships that we worked with, but A Talent was built there. So now we started recruiting with Dynamite, or I started recruiting with Dynamite to take some of the things I learned out of that test pod of A Talent and help other recruiters build up better systems, automation, and get better copywriting to increase their sales and recruiting efforts.
Interesting. So how do you use cold email or let's say LinkedIn outreach to help agencies either recruit more candidates or just get more clients?
It's a great question. So I think one of the big things in email is that people think it's either dead or they don't use it. My biggest thing is I don't really look at things as a one size fits all kind of solution. So what we do is we identify kind of what the practices that our recruiters or our salespeople are currently doing, and we try to optimize those things. A lot of times we get stuck in the idea of being or just doing what works, right? So some recruiters are mainly focused on LinkedIn automation. Some are doing a lot of email or cold calling. We believe in a multi-channel approach. So we try and integrate that in every way possible and try and create really great personalization and what I would call contextualization to really engage our targets at scale. So what does that mean? Contextualization and personalization. I think a lot of people talk about personalization a lot. It's like, oh, we've got to look at their profile and we're going to use AI to, pull the data from their LinkedIn and then create this really great opener. And at the end of the day, I think everybody's kind of figured that out, right? Everybody figured out like, most of that personalization is fake or created by AI in general. But what we believe in is understanding the customer or your end client or candidate and what their pains are and what kind of situations trigger those moments. And I think Lavender's done a really good job of like really highlighting that, right? What are the triggering events that encourage them to have a need for your service or have a reason for you to reach out versus just kind of, hey, I've got a candidate. I think a lot of times people are just like, hey, I've got an MPC or a most placeable candidate. I just want to talk to you. So, or I've got a job posting. How do you want to take a look? And I think that's kind of played out now. I think it's now more about creating great context and reaching out and engaging them at scale.
Right. I haven't seen the scale aspect in Lavender, but yeah, I think they're gonna go far. I use personally Apollo
Yeah,
to
we do too.
send. Yeah, okay, pretty cool. And yeah, there's the jump posting function. We try to have GPT written intro lines in there as well. What have been some of your best performing campaigns that you've been running since you've started that?
Yeah, actually, one of our clients just pulled in like $185,000 retainer contract and had like a 30% reply rate by just having a 2-sentence mousetrap email, as Lavender would call it. And it was really awesome to see that. So I think like shorter is better now, in really getting engaged with like your targets and really identifying a great prospect and whatever that persona might look like, and then building that out and engaging them that way. So one of my clients is in the government space, government contracting space, and he does a lot of like defense stuff. And he created a quick he's kind of positioned really uniquely. I won't give away his secrets, but it was basically China basically saying that he can identify secret clearance candidates faster than anybody else, and that landed him this like really awesome client that ends up being $185 commit $185,000 commitment. So I think, yeah, Apollo's a great tool. It's my go-to. Lavender doesn't really have like that outreach cadence piece. It's more of that personalization and contextualization and coaching you through creating a really great email. And I think those two work really well together. So.
Right. And the 185K deal with Lavender, are you talking about sending personalized email, not at scale, but just like one by one?
So no, so they created the email, and I think they actually used Lavender to identify if it was going to get a great score or not. And then they just went into their automation platform. They don't use Apollo. I've tried to get them onto it, but they have their own automation tool that they're using. And they're basically, they just went out and sent that email at scale because they found the right persona, right? So they really took the time to research the type of client that would need that service specifically, and not just any and every government contract company. And then was able to push that out relatively quickly, and landed like I said, a 20-30% reply rate. And that was just on their first email. They didn't even do any additional follow-up cadences. So
what was the volume of that campaign? So how many contacts? And also, like, how do you do psychographics, let's say, or customer personas on specific positions, right? Because I guess like CEO of displays from X industry, for example. So what was the quantity, and how do you build psychographics of demographics? Kind of my second question.
That's a great question. So he didn't really go with a big scale. Like he went with like 50 companies, and at the end of the day, he just created who he looked at who would use this service, and what types of companies. So like as an example, we would look at firmographics first, right? Drone company with a specific amount of funding that's doing X amount in business, or landed this type of business with the government, right? And that stuff is pretty much public knowledge, right? And then identifying then the demographic, so identifying the type of person that he would want to go after, so the CEO or the VP of engineering or whatever it might be, that would utilize that specific requirement. And then the psychographics is essentially, I think one of the big psychographic pieces is understanding like where their buying decisions are happening, and that only can get done when you have clients that you've engaged with, or have contacts that you can talk to them about. Because a lot of times people kind of guess like, oh, they're going to start doing trade shows or whatever it might be, and they might need my services, instead of thinking about it in terms of like, when in the buying cycle will they need, especially on the recruiting side, when in the buying cycle will they need my services, and getting them prepped up for that, and helping them find like whatever their ideal outcome is, and pointing to that ideal outcome and correlating that to recruiting, right? So I think a lot of times people just kind of, like I said, go after this NPC type of thing, where they're going in and putting a candidate in front of people and seeing if that works. And I think there's a better way to do it. You can do that, but there's still that build up to get to that, right? So really crafting a great email or messaging before you do that. So
what about recruitment agencies offers? Because to me, it seems like there's so many of them, and they all offer the same thing nowadays, which is like 10% or 15% of the first year salary. How can they differentiate themselves? Are there any other ways, like niching down for the specific role, the specific position? What great offers do you see nowadays?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, 10 or 15% would be really low for most agencies, unless you're an independent. And the reality is that there's thousands of recruiters that just jumped into the market because of the recent layoffs. So I think there's going to be a lot of people starting up their own independents, and they're going to be going after those low fees, and that's going to be their way of differentiating and getting that business. But to your point, if they're not differentiating, they're on a race to the bottom, right? And so what we try to do, especially is when we consult our clients, is we look at what is their magic sauce, right? Or what is their secret sauce, and how do they do it? And then we try and productize that as best as we possibly can. And that way you can differentiate outside of just saying like, oh, we have a great process, or we've got a database, because everybody's got that now. Oh, I'm using AI tools. I think everyone's got that now. So we try and figure out how they are willing or want to create a special offering for their clients. And if they don't have that, I think the best way that you differentiate is that you just deliver, right? So if it does come down to, what we have 3 different strategies that we call them, right? So there's relationship driven strategy. Sorry, you might hear my dog in the background. We have a relationship driven strategy, which is mainly focused on really identifying your target accounts, or working within your accounts that you've already won, and really just becoming the name in the entire company, right? How you do that is really personalization and, creating a really great deep relationship individually. And that can be like done by like dropping off coffees or whatever it might be. It's very manual. But then you have like what we would call a discovery, or basically a product or service led marketing strategy. And that product or service led marketing strategy is, again, going back down to that psychographics, or even the firmographics, and understanding what clients are currently dealing with, and what pains you can help them solve, and not just in the sense of being a recruiter or bringing in talent, right? So some things you can do to create better relationships on that solution driven strategy is providing like workflows. Who does this really well is Gong. Gong is not a presentation company, yet their leader is their empty leader is providing a deck to a pitch deck, right? That's one of their that's one of the things that they use to advertise, is download our pitch deck, and have a better presentation. So those are certain things that you can do on a product led discovery, or product led system, and you can really create better outcomes for your target clients, and that comes down to niching. So to your point. And then lastly, that's your MPC, or your volume-based approach. And that volume-based approach is really just, hey, I've got a really great candidate, and I know that they'd be a really good fit for these types of companies. And I think one of the big faults that a lot of recruiters fall into is they go, I'm going to go on the job board and find all the Python roles, for example. And I have the great Python candidate from Google, and he's fantastic. So I'm going to send him out to every single company that has a Python position. And at the end of the day, that Google Python candidate is not going to necessarily be the best fit for a Series A or Series B company that's looking for a founding engineer. That's most likely not going to be the case, and that person also might not be the best match for that kind of company either. So you really need to like identify still whatever those firmographics and demographic pieces that you have that are going to make sense for that client, and then create messaging around that pain for that candidate. And so then you can do it again at scale, and really hit 50 to 100 people a day. So
Right. I see that nearshoring is getting back to trends, but even that, so much competition, let's say in LATAM agencies, or let's call it Serbia or Ukraine for European countries, France, for example, Spain, and so forth. Yes, I've been seeing the trends also in my clients that they're diversifying. So they're offering the software development in itself, not just the recruiting. I think that can also be somewhat cool, although they can the perception can be jack of all trades, so kind of tricky. I think the offering is yeah, it's tricky, right? Because if you outreach to the chief recruitment officer or whatever synonym title they have with that, I think they're already doing the work. Maybe they might be overwhelmed, so you might want to double down on the
Yeah.
overwhelm and the help, and just being an ally rather than a competitor. I think that's a tough angle. Or you can reach directly to the CEO, and I like calling those like bubbles. When the CEO is on a bubble, it's like it's Monday. He just listened to that podcast, and now he's super motivated to get
Yep.
that person on board. I think like that's the exact moment to write the email. So if you can go like really deep in the tactics, see if that CEO read that post or listened to that podcast, for example, or was on that podcast and mentioned that he needed help with this. I think that can be phenomenal. And last but not least, with like the innovation part of it, I think it can be cool to really go outside the normal path. So whether that is, look, we'll try this candidate. He will do a trial for you for 2 weeks, and it's not going to be paid or anything. And then once he has traction and once he's proven himself to you, then yeah, we can talk about that. I also think maybe sometimes offering recurring packages can be cool.
Yeah.
Because
I think what you just mentioned is a really big the issue that a lot of people have in like creating these solutions is you are dealing with two people, right? Like, so you're a recruiter's a middleman at the end of the day. So getting someone to do 2 weeks, especially for free or to trial, like it's not going to bode well. Why would they jump from especially like the kind of recruiting that I coach for is more specialty recruiting, right?
Yeah.
So it's not as much on the like volume side of like a customer service representative or something like that. Like,
Okay.
yeah, you can do some of this stuff for that, but not really the case. I think the hard part of what a lot of people are trying to figure out is how can I create a proper solution that resonates with my targets and is going to bode well with my candidates. And I honestly just don't really see a solution where work and credits can get taken care of unless you have a consultancy, and then that's a completely different situation. But for like perm recruiting or like even contract recruiting, you need to figure out what kind of solutions are. I don't think there's very many solutions that are going to be talent oriented, to be honest with you. I think even if you have like, and everything's kind of been played like, oh, well, we have an extended guarantee of a 12-month guarantee. Like, no one wants to commit to that as a recruiter, period. Because then you're never going to be able to utilize your cash flow. And then you can't really do anything on terms unless you drop it to a point where it's arguably the lowest. So I think what you described as the recurring piece, I think that's a good way, right? We've done recurring kind of what we call sourcing agreements, where we go in and we just basically identify candidates, we get them screened up and we send them over, and then the client handles everything from there, especially if they have a really good recruiting team. Like, they're happy to do that. And we can save them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're happy to do it because we're getting paid every month 8, 10, 15 grand just to go through that process for them. And that's recurring revenue for us. And I think a lot of times right now, you might actually be able to do that because that's a really big sell for companies who have 3 people on their recruiting staff and have thousands of people applying to a position, and they have to screen through that, right? So there's some really good solutions out there. It's just, you got to be aware of like where your margins are, and it's just really difficult to do it.
Yeah, because other areas of innovation could be compensation that's based on milestones or giving shares, for example. I think recruitment agency could go with that. They could very much be also in the weeds of the contract itself and innovate on both sides, kind of be like good middlemen, provides coaching and report and following up on the candidates that they actually recruit. And I can also see I'm not sure if there's a SaaS that does that, but a SaaS that takes payrolls with some interest, that could be cool, because it's all about the offer, right? Like if the CEO wants to test, if he has a solid contract in place saying that if that does not happen, then I'm in the right to cut off the contract, and vice versa. The employee is like clear on the next task at hand. I think that can be a nice way as a recruitment agency to distinguish yourself and getting paid, because there's so many of them. There's probably a million agencies worldwide.
Thousands of them. Like it's like, and then all of them are all going after the same business. And so how do you stand out? It's really the question.
Right. I heard you had this workshop going on that we were talking at the beginning of the call. So where can people find out more about you and a bit more about that new thing of yours?
Yeah, so if you just go onto my LinkedIn, I think that's the best place to find me right now, because we're building out our website. It's actually launching this week. It's our 4-week BD cohort. It's called a BD Blast cohort. We are going to be diving deep into how to create personas, create the psychographics, firmographics, and demographics for your target clients and your target accounts, and then creating messaging that's compelling, and identifying a really awesome sequence to engage them utilizing automation and AI tools. I know a lot of people are really excited about ChatGPT, but everybody who's trying to use it right now and putting out a bunch of emails or using a email automation platform that uses an AI tool is probably not getting the best results, and that's probably because they just haven't really dived into how to use it. So we're going to have a 4-week intensive, 1 hour each day, or each Thursday starting June 9th. And by the end of it, you should be able to have a fully automated or fully built out automation and AI system to help you engage your clients at scale. So if you wanted to find me on LinkedIn, and we'll get you started.